Oh, you can't see me tonight. Here I am. I'm here. It's very cold here in Texas. So, we are going to be reading Mountains of Spices by the same author who wrote Hinds Feet on High Places. I was going to get the cover for you here. There you are. Here, full screen here. There we have it. Mountains of Spices. So, as always, we will be reading the information at the beginning of the story. For example, "My Lord and my King," said Grace and Glory, "what is true love? How can it be recognized?" "I am love," said the King very clearly. "If you want to see the pattern of true love, look at me. For I am the expression of the law of love on which the universe is founded." I am reading this from the website called archive.org, and you simply type it into the search bar and you will be able to read this as well. So, it was first printed in 1983. No. 1977. "Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like unto a roe, or to a young hart, upon the mountains of spices." That is Canticles, or Song of Songs, chapter 8, verse 14. So here we go. The table of contents. Now, this is the sequel to Hinds Feet on High Places. And so we know that, spoiler alert, those of you who haven't read Hinds Feet on High Places, cover your ears. Much Afraid is given her new name when she makes the mountains. And her new name is Grace and Glory. So we will read the preface to the allegory tonight, and let's see how far we get. So here are a few words of explanation to the reader about this book. And I'm going to make it just a little bit larger so you and I can both see it. Years ago, when I was starting out as a young missionary in Palestine, I was struck one morning by a correspondence between the ninefold fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5:22 and 23, and the 9 spices mentioned in the description of the garden enclosed, and the orchard of pomegranates in Canticles 4:13 and 14. During many happy, quiet times, I studied with the help of Canon Tristram's Flora of the Bible and another book called From Cedar to Hyssop, all the details I could discover about the trees and plants listed in these verses. And sorry, those are contagious. And the lessons to be learned by comparing them with the fruit of the Spirit. So she noticed a correlation between the 9 fruit of the Spirit and the 9 spices that were mentioned in the Song of Songs. When years later, therefore, I came to write the sequel to Hinds Feet on High Places, the lessons of those dear earlier quiet times returned to my memory. As, however, the spice trees growing up on the high places of this book are allegorical and not literal, I have not hesitated to adapt, and in some instances to alter slightly some of the details concerning the actual spices named. The descriptions, therefore, of the heavenly spices on the high places must not be taken as strictly accurate. I have allowed myself a little artistic license. The characters in the story are, of course, personifications of the unhappy and tormenting attitudes of mind, heart, and temper whose names they bear. In Hinds Feet on High Places, they were the enemies of Much Afraid who sought to hinder her journey to the high places. In this book, I have tried to show as clearly as possible that the very characteristics and weaknesses of temperament with which we were born, which often seem to us to be the greatest of all hindrances to the Christian life, are in reality the very things which, when surrendered to the Savior, can be transformed into their exact opposites, and can therefore produce in us the loveliest of all qualities. I have described the transformation of the deformities of character which have been the greatest problem in my own life, and about which therefore I can speak with the most authority. I was born with a fearful nature, a real slave of the fearing clan, but I have since made the glorious discovery that no one has such a perfect opportunity to practice and develop faith as do those who must learn constantly to turn fear into faith. One must either succumb to the fearing nature altogether and become a craven coward for the rest of one's life, or by yielding that fearful nature wholly to the Lord and using each temptation to fear as an opportunity for practicing faith, be made at last into a radiant, fearless witness to his love and power. There is no middle course. In the same way, a moody temper, a sharp, spiteful tongue, or a dismally anxious and foreboding habit of mind, as well as the other temperamental characteristics personified in this book, can all be gloriously transformed into their exact opposites. Love takes our defects and deformities, and out of them, as out of crooked Jacob, fashions princes and princesses of God. It must not be supposed that in the conversations between the shepherd king and grace and glory up on the mountains of spices that I am putting words into the Savior's mouth, which he never spoke, and claiming for them the authority of inspired truth. The conversations are simply meant to suggest the natural and sincere communion possible between any loving soul and the Lord of love, and the way in which we can learn of him by taking him to give us light, or by asking him to give us light on all the problems which perplex us, just as surely as we can be made aware of the personal guidance each one of us is to follow. I have simply shared the way in which my own mind and understanding have been illumined as I have sought day by day to open them wide to the Savior's love and teaching. I have no doubt whatsoever that my thoughts on these things are still so ridiculously inadequate that they fall far, far short of the real, unspeakably glorious truth. But then, There are endless high places still to ascend, and one can only describe glimpses seen on the way up. Of course, all the best and loveliest things must still lie ahead. One word about the verses and songs in this book. I often find it personally helpful to try and sum up and express in verse the new lessons which I learn and the new light which I receive, thus enabling me to fix them in my memory in a form in which I can easily recall them. Probably others also may find these verses a help in the same way. They were all written especially for this book, but most of them have also appeared in two of my other books, Unveiled Glory and Heavenly Powers. And that's the end of the preface to the allegory. I'm not sure how long this chapter is, so let me see. I'm going to see how long the chapter is. I love the way that this woman narrates. Okay, this chapter is pretty long. I think I'm going to leave it at the preface tonight. We must think about, first of all, what are the 9 fruit of the Spirit, and how does that affect our relationship with the Lord. So that was 20 pages. So chapter 1 is Mrs. Dismal Forebodings. Now, do you remember who she is? She is the aunt, or aunt, as I say here in the South. She is the aunt of Much Afraid. And she has 2 daughters, and who are terribly afraid of many, many things. So, the first chapter next time will be Mrs. Dismal Forebodings. So until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift His countenance upon you and grant you His peace.